This is North Pod, a North Melbourne fan podcast, hosted by Jason Hunt.
Stevenson with his own moves. Carlton. North are in front.
Hello and welcome to the first North Pod podcast. I'm your host, Jason, and welcome. Thanks for giving me a shot and downloading me and having a listen. This is, it's our first one, so I just want to talk a little bit about what the podcast is going to be. But really, I'm a North Melbourne fan. I have been for as long as I can remember, really. And I've been a member for as long as I've been able to buy myself a membership, since I was about 14 or 15. So it's just going to be my perspective on how the boys have been going week to week, any of the news that comes out during the week about North Melbourne, or just my thoughts on how we're going, what's going well, what's not going well. We might look ahead to the next game and what we can expect, and then hopefully moving into the future, we could look at taking some questions or interacting with the listeners if I have any, which I probably don't. So I guess that's my plan. But really, it's just to try and give an unbiased but fans' perspective on how we're going. But mostly with a positive vibe, I guess. Like, I don't want to sit here and just talk about everything that's wrong with the club or everything that's not going well, because I feel like the media does that enough for footy clubs when they're not going well, and certainly the last couple of years haven't been great for North Melbourne. So that's basically what it's going to be. And I thought we'll just jump right into the game, the Good Friday game against Carlton, which obviously was an 84-107 loss, a 23-point loss for North Melbourne. Great to see sort of 50,000 there at Marvel Stadium to watch it. I think it's fantastic that North Melbourne gets this marquee fixture. Obviously, the last couple of years playing against the Dogs and getting belted every week hasn't been great, or every match. So I think it's fantastic that we've got this opportunity to play in front of a big crowd. I guess put the North Melbourne name out there, because there's not a lot going on Good Friday. It's like the Good Friday appeal. All the shops are closed. People are kind of with family, and so there's lots of eyes on that game, since there's not a lot else happening. And we put up a good show. Got beaten in the end by that margin. So I thought how I'll try, and we'll see maybe as the podcast goes on, I'll have a go at just going through, I guess, the bad stuff, or the stuff that didn't make us as happy as North Melbourne fans, and then end on the good, and then look ahead to the next week. So let's start with the bad, and the bad. The third quarter was where we lost the game. Really, it was a 1-6 quarter. It's just a bit of a repeat of the game against the Hawks, really, which was also lost in the third quarter. Because both of those matches, I remember talking to people at halftime, and I'm like, I think, we're going well, we're looking good, like it's been positive, and then the third quarter we've just lost it. So I'm not sure what that is. Like, maybe it's a bit of, I guess my feeling is we've been a little bit outcoached, because I always feel, I know there's the saying like third quarter is the premiership quarter, but I always think sort of the third quarter is when the coaches have the most opportunity to kind of make some tweaks and changes at halftime. And the last couple of weeks after halftime, we've come out and we haven't looked as good, and or the opposition's looked better than us. So for me, I guess in some ways at least, we've been outcoached. We weren't able to stop that Carlton momentum in the third quarter. The fourth quarter, we were able to kind of stop that momentum, but during the third quarter, it was tough to watch. Carlton really got a run on. And I guess link in with that, my next point was that just the Carlton tall forwards got a hold of us. Kerno kicked 6 and Mackay kicked 4, so there's 10 of their 16 goals for the match between those two. And I didn't look at it, but I'm sure one or both of them had a hand in several of those other 6 goals that Carlton kicked. So it was frustrating to watch, but this one's one of those ones where you go, well, there's nothing we could do about it. Logue's not playing. He was suspended, which I thought was a bit questionable. Mackay's injured. So they're our 2 big tools. I mean, last year we would have put poor old Josh on them. But I mean, without those 2 big tools, we struggled. So McDonald and Bonner and Core were kind of doing their best, but they're all undersized, particularly on Mackay, who's 200 plus centimetres. You could see we were just trying to play that kind of zone defence where, whoever's closest is manning them up, but it wasn't going to work long term. We gave away a couple of free kicks, just desperately trying to defend them. Hopefully it looks like Logue will come back, and it looks like Mackay might come back next week, which will be good. But we really need at least one of those tools playing, and ideally both when we come up against sides like Carlton who have got those 2 big tools. And again, like linking on with that, the team defense just looked a bit shaky, particularly in that second half. And I guess when I say that, it was more around the kick-ins. So we kicked a lot of points. We kicked 18 points for the match, which is a lot. Just particularly in that second half, it just felt like every time we kicked a point, Carlton would take it end to end and kick a goal, or at least make a good entry inside their forward 50, which is it's so uncommon. I feel like, most games you might see 1, maybe 2 goals where the ball just goes end to end without a stoppage or a free kick or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, I think Carlton kicked 5 goals from kick-ins, which is just speaks to our team defense wasn't working well. And again, like without Mackay and Logue, that doesn't help. But I'd like to think that with players like McDonald and Bonner and Core back there, that you could at least bring a ball to ground and cause a stoppage. But invariably, it just was the ball would, they'd kick it out, they'd get a mark or bring it to ground sort of 70 metres from goal, and then they found Kerno or Mackay sort of on the wing, and then they found Kerno or Mackay inside forward 50 or at least around that 50-metre mark, and they looked too good, Carlton. So whereas I think in the first couple of rounds, we were really good at making sure that didn't happen. Certainly this week, that team defense or that zone structure, Clarko's cluster it used to be called, it didn't look as strong as I would have liked it to. And I think it often, particularly, unfortunately I was watching off the TV, you can't see it as well on the TV, but generally speaking, when it's on the TV, you sort of end up going, oh, well, how's this bloke got free? And invariably it's because the zone's kind of moved up, and then one player's had to, run off their man to go and cover one kick, and then the flow-on effect is that their man out the back's free, but they're kind of gambling on winning the ball there. So, yeah, it didn't look good. Those Carlton tools were way better at presenting and giving options than Larky and Comben were, unfortunately. But as I said, I think having those keys backs back will hold us in good stead. My last negative, I guess, is our entries inside forward 50 have not looked as good these last couple of weeks. I thought if you've watched North Melbourne the last couple of years, it's felt like we're just bombing it to sort of 30 metres out and hoping, which generally, again, if you've watched North Melbourne, hasn't worked. But I thought against Freo and against the Weagles, it kind of looked, like we had a bit more structure, and we certainly did a great job of finding Larky on the lead against West Coast, and I thought against Fremantle, particularly in the first three quarters, it got really sort of scrappy towards in that last quarter against Freo, but the pressure was on. I thought that we did a better job of finding good options, lowering the eyes, and sort of, like hitting someone up on a lead. But yeah, it didn't look as great this week or against Hawthorn last week. And I think it's always, nothing happens in isolation. Like, I'm sure that partly that's due to the pressure and the way that Carlton and Hawthorn the week before were setting up. So it's, it's the classic, like, they're not trying to bomb it long, I don't think. That's not what they want to be doing, but it's what it ended up looking like a lot of the time. And if Larky looked like he was a bit injured, well, he was a bit injured. I think he got a little hip pointer. So he certainly wasn't close to 100%. But if that's, he was there, he was kind of presenting, but not really giving us much. But more often than not, he had two on him. Like, Wiedering was always around him. Like, there's always two or three around him. And if that's the case, like, there's got to be some players that are freer. Like, I understand there's no such thing as a free man these days, because we're either playing a zone or it's half a zone. But if there's several players close to Larky, and I feel like there was all the time, like, where's Comben, where's Zerha, where's Curtis Taylor, where's Paul Curtis, like, where's Jaden Stevenson? They must have a bit more space. I just don't think we did a good job of identifying the best option going forward, because I think often it was a kick to sort of 30 out where it's Larky on a 1-on-3, or there was several of those just bombs from 60 that end up going to the top of the square and just get punched through for a rush behind, which is partly why we ended up with so many points. Like, I know it was 18, but I think maybe 6 or 7 of those were rushed. So our kicking accuracy wasn't as bad as the scoreboard looked. There was just a lot of rush behinds. But that being said, I think it was more about the entries, which resulted in that ugly looking scoreboard, and not necessarily bad kicking, although there were a couple of bad kicks. But that's enough of the negative. I think there was lots to be positive about. Heaps of stuff, actually. Like, it's always, you get sort of stuck on the negatives, I think, sometimes when you come away with a 4-goal loss. So let's have a look at the good stuff. Starting with Jaden Stevenson. And I know if you're watching sort of the last couple of years, there hasn't been a lot of positives consistently to say about Stevenson, but I thought Jaden had a good game. He kicked 3 goals, had about 14 touches, and he had the exact sort of half forward pocket kind of game that you want, where he looked like he was going to do something every time he got the ball. He didn't really have any of those cheap nothing possessions. He was getting the ball in dangerous spots. He did go on that scything run into the 50 that got where he got pinged for running too far, which I think was just so red hot. But again, like, he ended up handballing it. Like, that's probably the one mistake that he made in the game. He really should have just had a ping from about 40 there and tried to kick it. But yeah, I mean, he played really well. He kicked 3 goals. And I feel like he just continued some pretty positive form that he's had this year. He hasn't lit the world on fire, but he's been consistent, which I think as a sort of small or medium forward is really hard to do. And I've really also liked his pressure around the forward, like, defensively. I think that's something that he's been questioned on, I guess, in the past, where, like, what's he doing when he doesn't have the ball? And whilst I don't think he is laying heaps and heaps of tackles, I think he had a couple of tackles for this game. He's been chasing with aggression and putting in effort there, I guess, which is what you want to see from everyone. But in particular, he's a player that in the past has maybe been questioned about that, and I think he's been doing a great job on, just asserting his pressure and being involved even when he doesn't have the footy. So that was fantastic to see. I mean, he kicked accurately, which is more than we can say for a couple of other players. Another positive, I mean, we had more scoring shots than Carlton. We had 29 scoring shots to their 27. Zerha kicked one out in the full, or I can't remember if it was out in the full or it didn't even end up making the distance. So yeah, I mean we were just a bit wasteful, I guess, with our shots at goal and our inside 50s. Like I said earlier, we had a couple more inside 50s, and there was some patches where we just looked like the far more likely team. The second quarter, I thought we looked really good in patches, and then in the last quarter as well. It was more so when the game was done, but there were some parts there where I thought, it's just been such a long time since we've looked like the better team for a good patch, against a good side. Because I do think Carlton's going to be, they're undefeated this year. They've got their 3 wins, 1 draw. I can't see them not making the 8 this year, although it was very funny when they didn't make the 8 last year and the circumstances around that. So I think the fact that we had more scoring shots, more inside 50s, and some really dominant patches is a great sign for our young developing group. So that was positive. Kind of on a similar path, we didn't get blown out at the end. I think at some stage it got to 40 odd, or might have been 40 plus, the margin there in that last quarter. And we were able to bring it back to the 23-point margin at the end there. And we were looking like we were about to push for another score at the end there. So, there are consolation goals. We were certainly never going to come back and win the game in that last quarter. But it was nice that we didn't get blown out. In years past, it would have gone on to be that 50, 60 point loss, but it wasn't. So I think that's kind of a sign of the maturing group and the progress that we're making. That sure, we lost, and I don't think there's many North Melbourne supporters that were watching or that went along going, gee, if we don't win, I'm going to be spewing. I think it was all about showing that progress, and I thought we did a great job of showing that progress. And the 23-point loss felt. I won't say it felt right. I think actually we should have been closer based on how we played. But before the game started, I think we would have mostly been happy if we, could say, look, we lost by 4 goals, but we played well. I think that would meet or exceed most people's expectations for the match, particularly when our last couple of Good Friday matches we've just been spanked by 80 plus. Another positive was Darcy Tucker. I know he played his first North Melbourne game last week as the sub and came on and did a few good things, but I always think it's really hard to judge a player who comes on as a sub, because generally you're coming on with sort of, 40 minutes to play, and also you're fresh and everyone else is a bit spent, so you can kind of look better than you are. Or this match, he came on, he had 24 touches, he did some good things around the ball, he made some good decisions. I thought he looked like a good player. I don't think he's going to dramatically change the, what we look like as a team. I think Griffin Logue is a far more important piece structurally that we've needed. But I think Darcy Tucker looks like a great player. Looks like he could play on the wing. He could play in the midfield, or I think he could play anywhere really. I was just really impressed with his decision making, which is something that our team needs. We've lacked some good decision makers over the last couple of years. Just that, make the right decision under pressure, make the right quick decision. I thought he did a great job with that. And 24 touches. He looked like he'd been a North Melbourne player for a couple of years in terms of the way that he gelled with the group. It's great that he's in that kind of young but not 18, 19. He's got a ready-made body, I guess, for AFL footy. So I thought he looked good. And my final positive from the match was just that midfield looked so much better. And go figure, mate. Jai Simpkin and LDU back in. It just looked like a far more... It was back to what we've seen over the past couple of years. Really, all we've excelled at is centre clearances, really, or clearances around the ground in general. With obviously Goldie being one of the best ruckmen in the game. Not that you would know it, with a pretty decent midfield around him. Hawthorn we got thoroughly beaten in the midfield, but we definitely got the better of Carlton's midfield. I know Paddy Cripps seemed a bit quiet. He didn't have an absolute belter of a game, but he did. I think he ended up with 9 clearances. Like he did some pretty good work in that third and fourth quarter. But I thought, on balance, our midfield probably won the day. LDU wasn't as good as he was in round 1 and round 2, but he was solid. Simkin, I thought, did some really good things. Phillips is getting better with every match, will Phil. I know there's a group of supporters that are really keen for him to just get a good run out, get a full season run out to see what we've got, and I'm definitely in that bracket. He does such good grunt work. He's got really quick, clean hands. He had quite a few clearances. So I'm definitely keen to see more of Will Phil in the centre, even if I think he's going to go in and out of games. I think he might have had something like 19 touches. He doesn't quite have that sort of... I can't see him grabbing 30 at the moment, but he does a fantastic job in those centre clearances with his handballs, and it's good to see him kick a goal. He took a couple of good marks last week, so I'm impressed with his progress, particularly given what he's had to deal with the last couple of years. And I was a bit nervous about it, or maybe nervous is the wrong word, but I wasn't sure how Zerha was going to go through the middle. When I heard that's what we're going to be doing, I just thought, like, we're just trying to copy sort of the Dustin Martin model and the Jordan De Goey model, and I think you can only copy those models if you have the right player, and I wasn't sure if Zerha was actually going to be able to fulfill that. And don't get me wrong, he's not De Goey or Dustin Martin at all yet, and I don't think he will be. But he has been giving us a great look, a bit of just a different kind of vibe through the middle, I guess. He's similar to Cunnington in that he backs himself in. He doesn't mind a fend off, and he's quite aggressive. And I think, he gives us something different. So I haven't minded it. I think at the moment, given Common's not giving us much in terms of, scoreboard, I think Zerha's still really important to our forward line. Like, it can't just be up to Larky. But in time, I think I'm quite happy to see Zerha kind of splitting his time between sort of the midfield and half forward. I mean, he had a great game. If he'd kicked a bit more accurately, he would have had a belter, really. But yeah, I think he kicked 4 goals, 5 or something like that. It was a good game. So it was great to see him being able to do both of those things. Okay, well, that brings us to the last segment, which is looking ahead to next week, which is, of course, Gather Round, which should be an interesting concept, having all the matches in Adelaide. We've got Brisbane, and I think technically we're the home team. Not that really means anything given we're playing in Adelaide, but I'm looking forward to seeing what this looks like. Should be great for the game to have a bit of an experiment. I know we're kind of copying the NRL with their magic round, but look, it is what it is. Like, we'll give it a go, and if it works, it works, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. I think it'd be great to see this kind of concept in Perth as well. I'm not really sure how well it would work in New South Wales or in Queensland, just based on their levels of interest in AFL. But and really, I just don't think Melbourne needs it, really, given how much footy's played in Melbourne normally. But I guess maybe if they were playing in more country venues, but I mean, we do that in the pre-season tournament. Anyway, I'm just getting distracted. So Gather Round, we've got Brisbane on Saturday. Ben Mackay, it looks like, should be back. I think he's got a test on Thursday. I'm recording this on Wednesday, so it looks like he'll be back, which should be good. And Logue will be back. He just had that 1 match suspension, so that'll help with tackling Brisbane's tools, who have been a bit inconsistent this year, actually. Like, Joe Danaher and Eric Hipwood have been okay, but I wouldn't say they've been setting the world on fire. Regardless, it's going to be great to have Mackay and Logue back. I imagine we find a way to get them both back in. I'm not sure what that looks like, but I think they both have to come in. I'd like to see the back of Daniel Howe. I know I said at the top that this is going to be a mostly positive podcast. I'm not loving Daniel Howe. to me, he's a great depth player. He's a great player that he can come in when we've got lots of injuries, but that's not something that we have a lot of at the moment, I don't think. Get some form in the VFL. I'm happy for him to be the sub now and then, but I haven't been impressed with his decision making from what I've seen from the last couple of games. Liam Shields, I've been tremendously pleased with. Just thinking about, they've both come across from Hawthorn in different ways. Liam Shields has been great on field, made some great decisions. You can see that he's got that leadership, and I think it's really important that we have those sorts of players around the young group. But I hope that when we're all fit, Daniel Howe's not on our best 23 or so, and he's certainly not if we take him out and we bring Logan, it's not like for like, but I'm struggling to be positive with him. I get frustrated with a lot of his decisions. So hopefully he's out for me. Yeah, Logan, Mackay in. I don't know who else might be out. I mean, Goda and Bergman were pretty unlucky as well. One of them might find their way back in. We'll have to wait and see, I guess. And hopefully Larky comes good. He was completely ineffectual really last week. The injury report or the video that I watched from the North Melbourne team looks like he'll be good. Just needed like it was one of those things where he can play through it. He's not really going to be playing well, but he's providing an option. So I think we know how great a player Larky is and how important he is. I think he'll be better for the week's rest, and he can come back in. When I say come back in, he can come back and actually play rather than just being a beanpole standing there, not giving us much. And yeah, I mean, hopefully it's a great game. Hopefully it's a great round of footy. I know it's so weird. I said to one of my mate, in some ways, the last couple of years, it's just been easier because you watch the footy with no expectations. Like, you sort of walk away, and if we lost by less than 10 goals, it was, I wouldn't say success, but you went, oh, well, we sort of thought that might happen. But this year, every game I've been watching it going, gee, like we're a chance to win this, and I mean, we've won 2 of them. So it's a bit more stressful, but I think it's this weekend against Brisbane, I'm feeling the same vibes as the Carlton game. Like, ultimately, like, Brisbane are a better team. They're in a much different place to us with their list, and I think if we can come away and get within 3 or 4 goals of them at the end, that'd be great. I do think we're a chance, particularly with the neutral venue. I think that makes things a bit interesting. But if I'm tipping, I'm probably tipping against us, unfortunately. But look, you never know. It's crazier things have happened, that's for sure. And that, I guess, brings me to the end of the podcast. I just want to do a bit of a call to action at this point. Please share this podcast with any North Melbourne fans that get the word out there. I'm going to try and release weekly episodes, just going through that same process that we've gone through today. I'm certainly, going to toy with what the structure of the podcast looks like. I'm open to suggestions. I think the structure is pretty straightforward and boring at the moment, but I think I'm going to work on it and refine it, and hopefully we can make it more interesting. So please, share this podcast with anyone that that is interested in listening to some nobody talk about North Melbourne for half an hour. Give me a subscribe on your podcast service on Apple or Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. Leave me a review or a bit of a rating if that podcast service allows you to. I know that on some you can't, but certainly Apple and Spotify you can review, and just get involved with my my social accounts. I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. I mean, there's nothing on them yet, but if I'm going to be building that over the next couple of weeks. So just search for @NorthPod or @NorthPodShow. I'd love to hear your feedback. Let's chat about the footy. You might just be, telling me your thoughts about the games from the weekend or how we're going, or if you've got some feedback about the podcast. Like, I'd love to hear. I want to engage with any listeners that do get involved. I guess yeah, that's my call to action. So hopefully we can head over Adelaide and put on a good show. I hope that you enjoyed listening to me ramble for half an hour. And yeah, I guess go Roos.